All right, we're gonna start. I think we were head said like 8:15, so I guess we have a small crowd today, but we have a very cute one. So thank you for coming to our workshop today. This is the second half of the Anxious Generation presentation that we have been presenting on. My name is Megan Coy. I'm the supervisor at the Kindergarten Center, and I'm supervisor of elementary education.
I'm Carrie Romano. I'm the student assistance counselor over at Union School. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes, so as you know, we have already presented once on the Anxious Generation and really just some of the topics. We're not going specifically on the book, more of the topics and how they relate to us within education, within parenting, and we're looking to really just give some resources and to have some discussion. So it's really going to be today a little bit more discussion based, and we'll get some input in like how we can do work in navigating different things.
We're going to make you guys work a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Just very little. Very little. Very little. So thank you. All right. So our goals for today. So why are we here? I'm just going to click over to here and hit.
Replace it with millions and millions of 15-second TikTok videos and Instagram posts. That's what we've done.
Do you think most parents realize such a thing?
We have overprotected our children in the real world. We've underprotected them online. Boys are getting ever more addicted to video games, to porn. They blow out their dopamine circuits early. We can realize we made a huge, huge mistake. We can change this if we act together.
So that's why we're here. We know that technology has completely changed the world we live in. As a parent, as an educator, as a child, childhood looks different. So we are here to really just discuss some of the impacts and really what we can do as parents and to be mindful of really as we move forward.
All right.
So these are the goals for today.
So how your experience was as a child, right? And we were probably all in similar generation, and then how your child's experience is, how your experience as a parent is versus a child. What are our goals as parents, right? For some of these topics that we're talking about, the benefits of finding balance and avoiding overscheduling and while still fostering independence, right? So, and then how these decisions impact the children as students and as employees, right? As citizens when they develop into older adults. So this is where we're going to make you work a little bit. I'm going to pass out some Post-it, or I don't know if you guys really need it, but I have Post-its. We're going to ask you guys to just take a minute or two to think about what your expectations for your children are as a human at each stage of life. So what do you want for your child at the end of this school year, whatever grade they're in? At the end of high school and at the start of high school and then at the end of high school. So what are your hopes? I don't know if you guys want to write down on a Post-it note.
If you don't want to write it, just kind of
Think about it. Does anybody want a Post-it note? Okay. Just a little strategy we use in education to get you to think a little bit.
All right, so now class participation. So just thinking to yourself, is anyone thinking of would be willing to share a goal that they have for their child at the end of this year? So we have 6 months or so, 5 months. What kind of goal are you looking for your child in terms of development or maturity?
I have 2 fourth graders,
Okay.
so right now we're focusing on autonomy or independence, which is as much my problem as theirs. So I've been trying to be more mindful about letting them do things that I just have done automatically, and also more importantly, feeling the consequences of their actions if you don't do something. But it's remarkable to me how much I have to make a point of doing something my parents did automatically.
Right, and that's actually you're on point, because that's one of the things that we were talking about in our discussion planning, that we now have to teach or facilitate opportunities for things to happen that in the past came so naturally or just were incidental learning experiences. So how do we get them back? So thinking forward, at the start of high school, when you're saying to yourself, like, all right, I know my child's ready for high school, or what does your child look like?
And that may be a couple years away, but even if you want to think back about maybe when you were in high school, what were you able to do as a freshman going into the high school
Or you want them to have
to have
that
this?
mindfulness of-
I think it'd be great work by themselves and like be self-motivated and intrinsically interested in learning and not have to, you know, be writing on them because
Yeah,
I was able to do that in my first year of high school. But
absolutely.
also able to like really recognize their emotions and sort of sit with because the beginning of high school is like a really, you know, emotional time for kids, and so just being able to sit with the discomfort and the awkwardness of being 15.
Yeah.
So her goals for her child would be to be able to be self-motivated and be able to do their homework and to be able to do those tasks on their own, while also being able to be emotionally strong and to be able to go through some of those challenges, which are all necessary to get through high school and through life, great foundational skills. And then last, when your child is leaving high school, so whether you're going into college, going into the workforce, when you're like, wow, like my kid's rocking it. Look, what does, as a person, so what do you want for your child at that age? Someone else, maybe?
I would want my son to be super independent, but also want to spend time with me and his family.
Right, okay,
It's good.
so independent,
Yeah.
but still having
Like
that core
value.
value of family. Yeah, and I think these are all great, and basically, I think, common threads among all of us that we, as a society, hope for our children, and I think that sometimes it gets misconstrued how we get there, and everyone, of course, is gonna have their own take on how to do it, and we're not here to tell you how to parent, but we're
Absolutely
just
not.
here to just say, like, here are some things you can try, or here are some ways that you can look at from this perspective, or why some of these things are important.
And also just part of the discussion is part of the awareness, right? Like we're all in the thick of it, whether as educators or parents. So hearing from others, like what their hopes are, like kind of fosters some ideas, or what struggles that you're going through can also lead to awareness so why are some of these different? So if you can just think about it, take a minute if you want to. Small group of us, so just take a minute. We're going to think about like why are the expectations different at different times in life, and then this part, which is for something that I struggle with, is what are some of your concerns as a parent that may stop you? We kind of hinted at it, like what are we doing that's kind of stopping us a little bit from allowing for that independence or for that functionality. So if we could just think about that. So why are some of the expectations different at certain points? And then what are some of the things that maybe would stop us, right, from like when they're starting freshman year or high school? Like what are we doing, or what are we worried about as parents that kind of hinder us from doing that? So just take a minute and then we'll discuss.
And these all go together.
Yeah, they're very similar.
All right, so I know we don't have a huge group together, but I think that just thinking back to like the little conversations, the comments and responses for each age group, like why are they different? Like why do we not have the same expectation for a kindergartner or a end of
Middle
this
school,
year,
yeah.
and the end of next year, the
High
end of,
schooler. High school.
Why are they different? It's not a trick question. Like, why do we have different expectations?
Their maturity is different.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, the maturity.
Do any of you think that social media or technology will influence where your child will be or could be at the end of those mile markers?
I see it. Yeah, everybody's
I
nodding
see a
their
lot
head.
of nods, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Like what part of social media or technology, like, do you think would play a role in those?
Like my daughter has Skype. I don't know, even TikTok is open anymore. And her name in Skype came to my email saying that name wants to connect with the TikTok. Me as an adult understand that this is spam, but she's like, oh, it's me. I have a TikTok account, and then she can just like it's an innocent action from the child.
Yeah.
How it's gonna end up.
Right. So not understanding consequences of different choices made, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think it's a two-part thing. My kids are not on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I know, because they have books, which is like whack-a-mole with that. That's
Yeah.
the only device my kids have, and I have a very, well, actually, no, just hate relationship with them, if I'm honest.
As do I. Yeah.
I can't leave
Yeah.
But it's like, but if they were, this the comparison, like comparing themselves to others, and even though my kids are not on social media, I will hear them quote memes from their friends. They hear them, how do you know that? Like what do you, they don't even know what they're saying half the time. That said, I'm not much on social media either, but I am going to doom scroll as much as the next person.
Yeah.
And the more I'm aware of what's out there, the more, and that's what's informed my parenting up until this point, is all the what ifs. And like, when my parents were parenting me, you only heard about the bad things that happened in your immediate circle.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if anything bad happens to any kid anywhere,
You're hearing
you
it.
hear about it, and then you start to confer, oh, it must be a very common problem.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I hear about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just starts to
Right.
impact your parenting, which then turns my 10-year-old boys into little infants if I let them.
Yeah.
So you're saying you're influenced by the
Yes,
technology
it's
coming
not
in,
just
so
my
you're
kids.
hearing.
I think I do, and have done up until now, a fairly good job at keeping them from delving into into technology,
Yeah.
but that has not shielded them from what it's done to me and
Yeah.
my generation of parenting,
Yeah.
which is far more helicoptery than I want it to be.
Yeah,
But
and I think what you're expressing is similar to what a lot of people express. And that's part of the book, right? Like, so if we think back to when we were children, our parents, I was walking to a convenience store to get my mom something like blocks away at 9 years old. I'm going to give you an example. My daughters walked home for the first time by themselves. They're in 4th and 2nd grade. They were supposed to do it 2 weeks ago. Do you know what my husband did? He left work early to go meet them because he was too nervous. We're 3 blocks away from the school. So they finally did it this week because we needed them to. And they were excited. Like the day that my husband went and met them at the corner, they were like, we were supposed to walk, like they were disappointed,
Right.
So I think, we are in, because we see the thick of it. We see the social media, or we hear these like 1 or 2 stories and then we're like, oh my God, it's gonna happen, so.
And that for sure is influencing how we're parenting. So
Yeah.
whether it be we need to have our child, we need to provide our child this, right? Over giving, over gifting, overindulging in what the hottest thing is, from the social media end of it. But on the same thing, when we were younger, only extreme news everyone in the country
Yeah.
heard about, something that was significant or a national epidemic or that was going on. Whereas now there could be one case of something that may or may not have even happened, but it's in your feed because you liked it, and now it's just feeding you. So again, it's that self-fulfilling, oh my gosh, I'm putting them back in the playpen, they're not leaving, like even though they're 4th grade, we're not doing it. So I think that's a great point.
Are the Chromebooks they get just for COVID?
No, they have blocks and access.
Yeah.
Blocks, but they still have YouTube.
Yeah.
And which I understand that they have. By now, again, I've been very fortunate so far, but I had a friend who was like constantly, she checks her son's YouTube
Yeah.
history and has found things that he was able to.
Access.
And,
Yeah,
and
because
part of
again,
growing is also informing them how to be, because these things are always going to be available to them. So it's just it's changing again. How do we get to that next goal? Like we now know the different ways of teaching students how to be good digital citizens.
I have a question.
Sure.
When is a good time to start trusting? Like I start literally physically moving the Chromebook, especially for the weekend from her, and then I feel guilty too because it's like, okay, I'm telling her I'm not trusting. Then I try to trust her, and then she speaks, goes to her room under the blanket, and then she wants to play.
Yeah.
When is it? When is that?
I think it's finding the personal balance for your family. So it has to be a personal choice that you feel comfortable with and understanding the guidelines. So they're finding workarounds everywhere, right? So we need to be able to be mindful of that and figure out
What
maybe
works.
it's giving that education of what it is and teaching them why they have to self-monitor, why this is inappropriate, why. So it's really our role, not so much to take it away,
I
which
told her
we do
a
need to,
couple of
but.
times that I see I trust you, and basically it's making me feel that I'm distrusted, so I have to take it back again. Again, like a month later, I'm knowing that I hide it, I forget that I hide
Right.
it, I see how this to do. Like, I'm trying that, but I feel that it's still, maybe she's still feeling more excited about the with
something.
which is- It might be just because I forgot. She's like, okay, let me go use it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's also
But,
maybe,
maybe I'm triggering it more.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's something to monitor and to just be reflective of, or have a discussion with her.
With
So, like,
her,
why
yeah.
are you taking it? Like,
Yeah.
is it like, is this something that you feel that you need? You're feeling connected. You don't feel connected. Is it something where you're like, I just got over on mom, and it's kind of, you know, so it's.
part of a discussion.
I think having the discussions, even if you're taking it or allowing or whatever it's going to be, it's like giving them some information and education on the why. And I think even as a district, we've talked about how do we bring all this information that we're providing to parents into a more palatable experience for children to understand it. And we teach them through the schools like digital citizenship, which talking about, you know, when having a digital footprint and all these different things, but having them understand it in a more conversational way is one of our goals too. So great
Yeah.
points from everyone.
All right. Yeah, we did that.
I think the one thing that we put the next one that is important to think about is we're really talking about promoting children's independence. And to your point, we kind of just touched on it a little bit. And we set goals for our children at all these different points that we talked about. We all had a lot of head nodding. We have very similar goals for our families, for our children. Do you often become reflective as to how to separate where you are from your child at that point? So if you think about it, I think it was maybe the next slide. Yeah, that's good. Like what is your role in it? So you want them to be successful, you want them to be independent, you want them to do your homework, you want them to do it. But I think the key that we maybe didn't say the word was we want them to be able to do it independently.
Self-reliant.
And be self-sufficient. And
Yeah.
if we over-parentify, which is something that we are all guilty of at one point or another, we are not allowing them to develop those
Self-reliance.
skills that are necessary. Perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that to that point before, when we were asking the question, why do we have different expectations that were brought to the table at these different levels? It's because they're not ready. But if we don't let them practice along the way, how are we going to have these expectations for independent humans when they go on? So it's being mindful of parenting, it's being mindful of the choices, it's being mindful of the education to your child from you, from understanding it in that perspective.
Okay. All right. So part of that, right, what Mrs. Coy Megan just hinted at is there's going to be bumps along the way for both your child and for you, right? You know, there's no smooth. There's going to be bumps along the way for everybody, okay? And some of those bumps, we listed some on the board, but there may be others that, you know, so some of these things are maybe some of the things that are hindering us from allowing them to do it, right? It's hard to watch your kids struggle. It's hard to watch your child not be the best or feel like they're not the best, to have failures, to have tried multiple times and still not be able to do it, to be vulnerable, right? That's really hard. To be uncomfortable, to feel scared, to be bored, right? Nobody's bored anymore. Everybody's got to look at their phone or do something. And I'm guilty of that as well. But so some of these bumps lead to great growth, lead to great self-awareness, lead to interest, lead to, confidence. So some of these bumps, they're okay, although they're hard to experience when you're experiencing them. So I know we touched upon a bunch of them. Are there any others that maybe you feel like might be something that's, causing us to maybe jump in a little sooner than we would, or that we would hope to allow them to grow?
I feel like the morning is the toughest, and I'm like, dude, just get up, get dressed, and eat some. Why is this so difficult? Ella rolled out of bed at 7:45 the other day, and I'm like, get up, like why? And it's like that is something that is so easy. Like, why is that such a hard thing for them to
Get moving.
I feel like I have to constantly be in their face. Why is this morning and night? Why is this routine that you get ready for bed, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, like those simple things that they should be growing. Like I still feel like I have to be in their face about, and I want them to just do some things on their own.
Yeah.
Stuff like they'll come home and they'll do their homework 1, 2, 3, and I don't have to bug them.
Yeah, that's
But to get up and brush your teeth, why
Yeah.
is that so
Yeah.
So you're saying establishing their routine and following through on it, developing their independence within their day is something like how,
But it's so difficult.
yeah. And some of it is maturity.
That's what I was gonna say. In time, like sometimes you don't have time to. You don't have time to. Yeah.
You have to, why is that independent so difficult?
Yeah.
I think some of it can be age, depending on the age of some children. The concept of time is a little bit abstract.
Yeah.
And it also is, what's the consequence if they don't? You're just gonna scream and they're still getting to school at time.
Yeah.
So is there a consequence? Or we say, fine, I am not rushing. I have to leave the house at 7:45. You're walking if you're not ready. Or then there's that intrinsic motivation to say,
Yeah, there's a
It's raining out.
yeah.
And then you're gonna be like, oh, should I drive them anyway? Like, no, let them walk. Or
Yeah.
let them have to go
Late to
sign in
school,
late, or
or-
feel uncomfortable
yeah.
going into class, because that itself may be like,
Then- yeah.
yeah, and that's
It's hard to
important.
follow through. Yeah.
Right, so follow through for sure is a key.
Motivating.
part. And
Yeah.
Actually, this is probably one of the bumps that we face as parenting, right? So we're have all these emotions. We don't want them to be bored. We don't want them to do this. So we're fixing everything in advance, or we're making sure that they're going to be successful. We're putting them up, and then we are doing way
Their
too
job.
much.
Yeah.
And what happens too is we often overschedule. So if we're overscheduled, then we're rushing. So
Yeah.
we don't have time for them to go and find their uniform because you have to leave 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Or you have to get 2 drop-offs. And how are we doing this? And these are all challenges that everyone faces,
Yeah.
but I think what we need to start looking at is making the time to either make them be accountable or have a consequence of it, to make them understand that time is valuable. Or similarly, understanding how
Steps. I
Yeah,
was going to say the
there's steps
steps.
to get there.
You know, so maybe, and I'm just going to use your example. So thank you for sharing. Like, you know, maybe it's too. I don't know. I don't know your child, but maybe it's too overwhelming. Like all of these steps. So maybe you start with one. Like you're going to be responsible to brush your teeth. I'm not going to remind you. What's a natural consequence? You'll have smelly breath when you go to school, and your kids, like, you know, I know it's gross, but like. It's something that would be a natural consequence.
says it to you,
So you're
like,
like, they're going to be brushing their teeth every day, right? So a small, so like small steps. So maybe it's too much that they're having to be reminded of, or maybe even just. And again, these are just. I'm not telling anybody how to parent, but just some small suggestions. Like maybe having a list. Okay, by the time like we're getting ready, I need you to have your, you know, brush your teeth and your socks on. I don't know. It could be something small, right? Like. And then eventually they're going to start getting that routine. So maybe breaking it down might be a little bit helpful, and it would just be too overwhelming. Like, you know, even when I get 5 directions, I'm like, wait, what was I supposed to do? So maybe even like starting small, like you're responsible for brushing your teeth on your own. I will remind you to get your homework folder. I don't know, something like that.
And using visuals. So
Yeah.
it may be that at the top of if they get ready
bathroom,
upstairs,
yeah.
it's upstairs, that at the top of the stairs there's a picture of a toothbrush and a pair of socks.
Yeah.
And that's their reminder so that it's not you screaming to do it. And
Yeah.
you know, hopefully we're not prompting them to look at the stairs going downstairs. you know. But it is one of those things, like just having something else where you can take yourself
Self out of it.
to allow them that opportunity to start to grow.
And even like I think somebody mentioned it, like timers can be, I don't know, we have Alexa in my house, so I'll be like, set the timer for 5 minutes. So I'm like, Alexa's going off. What are you supposed to have done? And then I set a second one. Alexa's going off. We're supposed to be out the door, you know, like, so just kind of, again, like Megan said, like removing yourself so that you're not the bad guy. Alexa is, you know, the timer is. The timer went off. It is, you know, so, yeah. You know, again, that technology, right? That technology.
So
Um,
we discussed
yeah.
technology, we were talking about the negatives,
Yeah.
there really are amazing positives of it
Yeah.
too, but really it's just integrating that balance of it.
Yeah.
Also, I just to build on, because I have a similar issue. The thing I realized, not mom with my child personally hates to be told what to do, so we'll actively avoid doing like every night struggle with brushing teeth. I can tell my husband, let them suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
Let them. But what was interesting is my husband was like, well, what if the dentist hates a cavity? How does that look on us? And it made me think. I'm like, wow. It goes back to not only do we not want to let our kids suffer consequences because we want to protect them, it
Yeah.
also has it reflect on us.
Yeah.
Again, my parents couldn't care less about things like that back in
Yeah.
the day, like other judgment of other
Yeah.
parents. That wasn't an issue. So I've noticed that with my one kid, letting him have, I got him to be more independent and it's still lovely. go by not hounding him.
Right.
But also having to accept the fact that I needed to deal with his consequences as much as he did.
Right.
Which is
uncomfortable.
yes,
Yeah.
especially
So
since his
you
brother's
being
the opposite,
uncomfortable.
and he's like, it affects him too, and he's like, but it's not fair, we're gonna be late because, but
Yeah.
I find that I couldn't do the reminding anymore, so let's just not.
And-
have business.
Yeah.
And maybe some of these are are negotiable and non-negotiable.
Yes,
So it might
yeah.
be, you have to brush your teeth. I'm gonna remind you 1,000 times, but I'm not gonna remind you on this. Or I'm not gonna remind you, but we're going to the dentist April 1st and it's gonna be on you. And you almost hope they become
I
happy at that
gleefully
point.
outed him as not brushing his teeth reliably, and actually was a little annoyed that he didn't have any
Yeah,
cavities.
yes, right.
Like, I mean, I'm happy, but I'm also like,
No, because it didn't have the
and
natural
of course,
consequence
as soon
of
as
it.
we got out of the car, he's like, see, no cavity.
Right.
But again, that's the thing, but the smelly breath, I'm like, yeah, your friends are not gonna.
Yeah.
Right.
But it also some that you're saying when your parents say it, like, and again, I'm not blaming social media, but like if you are on social media, you see these things, or you talk to, like you're seeing these bright smiling faces, like these bright whites, so all those things, like that's what when your husband, you mentioned your husband said, well, how does that reflect on us?
Yeah.
We didn't have these photos. Like everybody had those, you didn't see all those things on social media. You didn't hear all those things. There also wasn't, and we're going to dive into this too about the overscheduling. When we were growing up, there was, I was on one team. Now you're on 1,000 teams. So you're comparing with other families when you're like in these events and in these activities. You're hearing all these different things, and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So we're going to jump into that. I think we kind of talked upon this. So, okay. Do you want to? Okay. So we just have a small portion of a TED Talk. It's like it's 15 minutes, but we cut it. Oh, Megan cut it because I couldn't figure it out. But it's kind of to not like summarizing what we're talking about and some of the things that we're doing. And Julie Lythcraft-Hames, I'm totally not saying that right, is a motivational speaker, an author. She was a dean at Stanford University. I don't know, she has like a whole like roster of things that she is, but now she's like a motivational speaker. But she's talking about the impacts of some of these things. So we're just going to watch a portion of it.
Hi. Hold on.
I'm going to make it, yeah.
End up with a longer childhood resume when we help. What I'm saying is that often it comes at a long-term cost to their sense of self. What I'm saying is we should be less concerned with a specific set of colleges they might be able to apply to or might get into, and far more concerned that they have the habits, the mindset, the skill set, the wellness to be successful wherever they go. What I'm saying is our kids need us to be a little less obsessed with grades and scores and a whole lot more interested in childhood providing a foundation for their success built on things like love and chores. Did I just say chores? Did I just say chores? I really did. But really, here's why. The longest longitudinal study of humans ever conducted is called the Harvard Grant Study. It found that professional success in life, which is what we want for our kids, that professional success in life comes from having done chores as a kid. And the earlier you started, the better. That a roll up your sleeves and pitch in mindset, a mindset that says, there's some unpleasant work, someone's got to do it, it might as well be me. A mindset that says, I will contribute my effort to the betterment of the whole. That's what gets you ahead in the workplace. Now, we all know this. You know this. We all know this. And yet, in the checklist in childhood, we absolve our kids of doing the work of chores around the house. And then they end up as young adults in the workplace, still waiting for a checklist. But it doesn't exist. And more importantly, lacking the impulse, the instinct to roll up their sleeves and pitch in and look around and wonder, how can I be useful to my colleagues? How can I anticipate a few steps ahead to what my boss might need? A second very important finding from the Harvard Grant Study said that happiness in life comes from love, not love of work, love of humans. our spouse, our partner, our friends, our family. So childhood needs to teach our kids how to love, and they can't love others if they don't first love themselves, and they won't love themselves if we can't offer them unconditional love. Right. And so, instead of being obsessed with grades and scores, when they come home, when our precious offspring come home from school or we come home from work, we need to close our technology, put away our phones, and look them in the eye and let them see the joy that fills our faces when we see our child for the first time in a few hours. And then we have to say, how was your day? What did you like about today? And when your teenage daughter says lunch, like mine did, and I want to hear about the math test, not lunch, you have to still take an interest in lunch. You got to say, what was great about lunch today? They need to know they matter to us as humans, not because of their GPA. All right, so you're thinking, chores, love, that sounds all well and good, but give me a break. The colleges want to see top scores and grades and accolades and awards, and I'm going to tell you, sort of. The very biggest brand name schools are asking that of our young adults. But here's the good news. Contrary to what the college rankings racket would have us believe, you don't have to go to one of the biggest brand name schools to be happy and successful in life. Happy and successful people went to state school, went to a small college no one has heard of, went to community college, went to a college over here, and walked out. The evidence is in this room, is in our communities, that this is the truth. And if we could widen our blinders and be willing to look at a few more colleges, maybe remove our own egos from the equation, we could accept and embrace this truth and then realize it is hardly the end of the world if our kids don't go to one of those big brand name schools. And more importantly, if their childhood has not been lived according to a tyrannical checklist, then when they get to college, whichever one it is, well, they'll have gone there on their own volition, fueled by their own desire, capable and ready to thrive there. I have to admit something to you.
So I think it's interesting because this was from, I think, 2015, 2016, her TED Talk, and one of the things she said was, get off your technology when you go into the classroom, into the home to greet your child. That wasn't even when technology is as amazing as it is right now. It's on our watch, it's on our phone, it's on our Google Nest Play, whatever, which isn't bad, but it's everywhere. So you're constantly fixated somewhere else. So it's emphasizing years back the need to reconnect because we've disconnected.
Yeah. So it was a 15-minute TED Talk, and she talked a little bit more about like some of the things that we touched upon. But again, it's just about the checklisted. I like her word, the checklisted childhood, right? Like I feel like that's something that I didn't experience as a child, but my kids are experiencing. So we want to shift a little bit. Part of like unplugging, right, is having free and unstructured time, which is very rare nowadays. I'm guilty of it myself with my own kids, but it's very, very important, and it helps in a lot of different ways. So let's just take a second and think about, like, if you think about your kid's schedule or your schedule, how often would you say you have free time to just be or to just play, whether it be by themselves or to set up a play date? I have to be honest, I'm trying to set up a play date actually with Megan's sister, and we can't figure out a time because of our crazy schedules, you know? So take a second and really think about how much free time do you think your kids have without an activity or something scheduled? And it may be different for all of us, right? Not everybody's, you know, in
And on the bigger picture, how much family time do you have?
Yeah, true.
So the point before, you want your child to go be a successful child, you can go be successful, but understand the core importance of the family. Sometimes we just assume, they know this is our family, we got each other's back, but it's like you're so busy, you forget that, to consciously acknowledge this is our family.
So a lot of things can be learned from free and unstructured time. They're able to try to explore their interests, right? Each one of your, depending on how many children you have, they may be different, right? So one may be really interested in arts, where others may be interested in technology, or others may be interested in sports. But if we don't allow them to try, so we're going to talk about the positives. There are a lot of positives from structured activities, but there's also a lot of positives, and I think we forget about that, from the unstructured play and from the free time. Creativity, right? So even I'm thinking, again, my kids are a little bit younger, and I'm just using myself as an example. Sometimes when I have play dates or when we're meeting up, I'm organizing, we're gonna do this activity. Whereas I don't know, sometimes when I don't, they have more fun and they're just creating these things, and they came up with this game, and they're making outfits out of so I think part of us is oh my gosh, part of me, I'm okay, what am I gonna do with them when they're over my house? I have to have this activity and this craft and that. And sometimes they just wanna play with a cardboard box. I'm just using that as a very extreme example, but it's true. So allowing them that time to be creative, and with that creativity comes leadership skills. Who's going to, come up with the game, and how are we gonna negotiate who's gonna be the leader, and who's gonna be the person who's, even a simple game of tag, right? Sometimes we say, you're gonna be the tagger, you're gonna do this. Let them choose, let them have a little bit of conflict, right? Because then they realize how to work it out, right? If we're always working it out for them, then they don't know how. And we're doing it because we don't wanna see them upset or them frustrated, but we all have to be a little frustrated in order to grow. And we all have to be a little bit uncomfortable, ourselves included, for us to grow and for our kids to grow.
And just to your point, I think, the game of tag is very interesting too when you watch children play it themselves, because when that one child doesn't want to be tagged, well, I'm not playing it, right? It's understanding that there's a commitment or responsibility, and then you may step in and say, you know what guys, all right, let's just play something else so that you all get along, instead of naturally making them assume that responsibility or making them feel uncomfortable, not making them, allowing them to feel uncomfortable to get through those moments. So there's a lot we're having to communicate. They're arguing. We tagged you, you're right. No, you didn't, you didn't tag me. Well, it's okay to argue. That's how you communicate. And if you don't practice communicating among the safety of your peers or your family, again, when you go to that next step, we want children to be successful, but a capable and successful society, expectations have to be set along the way.
And practice, right? Because you are gonna always have conflicts. You are always gonna have, no matter what stage in life, you're always gonna have these little things that maybe make you feel uncomfortable, or that, you don't agree with. And how do you communicate that as a human being? And if you don't practice it, you're not gonna, yeah, go ahead.
We don't have a lot of free time during the week, but I have Monday to Thursday, no devices. But then I find when we do have that free time lunchtime, we'll just sit there and stare into space. And I'm like, find something to do. Pick something, draw. The other one is fine, we'll start drawing, doing things to entertain themselves, but it's just fine, just later. And I'm like, you're gonna lay there till bedtime? Because you're not having the TV on, you're not.
Right.
And he's like, well, you're not gonna let me play on my phone, or you're not gonna let me go on the phone. So
I feel like it's harder for boys. I have a girl and a boy, and my daughter could do crafts all day long. So creative. My son, he either wants to play sports or video games or whatever. And when it's cold, he's like, I can't go outside. So then when I'm like, you can't be on your screen, he's like, well, I'm just gonna stare at the ceiling.
that's what I get.
So do you let them?
Restraint.
No, I get frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
But you give in?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Okay, but that's good, because I think, so
They
if
were junkies with the technology, so I was like, Monday to Thursday, no, but then on Friday, they need
Right. But I feel that, it's exploring, if they might really need to decompress.
Yeah.
So they might be complaining that they're not doing anything, but they just may need that mindless time, because, or, of course there's behaviors well, I'll show you, I'm just gonna not do it. But eventually it's gonna break. And if
yeah.
you're going to find something out, or they just may need time to be quiet. I added that last one, how to be comfortable with free or downtime. Everyone needs to figure out how to just sit there for a minute. They don't have commercials between their TV shows. The TikToks or all the social medias, they know exactly where
15 seconds, whatever, 20
attention
seconds.
span is.
Yeah.
They know that if this isn't on or they missed it, the Netflix, they can get it, or on YouTube, wherever it's going to be. And I think just those little things, back to what we were talking earlier, that we have to teach things that we just learned. This show was on at 8 o'clock, TGI Friday, whatever it was. 8 o'clock, you had to be home, or you had to have your, the pizza had to be off the table so that you could watch it.
Yeah,
And
yes.
now every turn.
Yes.
Now I feel like I have to manufacture it.
I feel
Yes.
like disappointment was built into our childhood. I feel like that is the most daunting sound, but
But
it's
it's-
the most positive thing that I think we could have experienced.
You
Because
know, the only disappointment they have now is when you take away the
Right.
screens, and then it's not,
And
on
it's-
average, I missed, Full House.
Right.
It's, oh my God, why are they just?
And it's a penalty rather than, right,
It's a meltdown
Yes.
of epic proportions.
Yes.
if you-
for sure.
So, and thank you for sharing. I mean, it might be worth a try to see, like, if you let him stay there for like 40 minutes to see, maybe he'll get up and move. But, I don't, obviously, I know. When I let my one who's needs to be entertained, they just go and annoy their sister. So then I'm like,
I
ah.
actually had a list, and I meant to bring it, and it's things your children can do independently at home, things you can do independently.
Is it from that Let It Grow?
This is
Oh.
actually with your siblings, and I'll post it as like a PDF to one right after we post this one. Also, Let Grow
Yeah.
is a organization, we've talked about it before. It is providing opportunities for parents or networks of people to provide opportunities to grow. So we all said we need to let go so we can let them grow, and it truly is giving some opportunity. It gives a little bit of a framework, like it's okay, or here are some suggestions. So
Questions.
this workshop is intended for parents that have 4 through 12. So 4 through 8 falls under the same scale as some of the things they might recommend from kindergarten through 8th grade, but they have an entire separate checklist, and I have copies, I'll distribute them afterwards. Of what are some of the independent tasks your children have
Could-
not done
yeah.
or could do at the older age? And it gives you that gauge why the expectation going back earlier were different. You have to prep them to get to that next level of the older.
And there's a nice checklist that, like, again, like Megan said, like breaks it down, like by 4th grade, maybe you want to have them do this, or if your kids are into crafts, these are some ideas for, boys. So they have a lot of resources on there. So possible, and we're going to talk about, because there is a lot of benefits of all these structured things, but some possible downfalls of overscheduling, interrupts value of time. We talked about that, allowing them to rest and be bored. Sometimes overscheduling also can lead to, fatigue, irritability. Like, think about it. When you're running from place to place to place, or you have a meeting, like, think about how irritable you are. Sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you need a snack. And it can increase stress. There are a lot of benefits, but it can, that rush is exhausting, mentally, physically, and it really can increase irritability, stress, depending on, how each child handles those different activities. Some thrive on it. Some need to keep it, and others need a break. Others need some downtime. Others need maybe a little bit less of the structured activities. But again, it comes back to what we were talking about, having that open discussion and open balance as a family. What one child may need may be different than your other, and you as a family need to find what works best for you as a unit and as each individual child.
In the TED Talk, she referenced having that checklist of childhood, like you did everything. We went to the shore in the summer, we went to this experience, we did this museum, and that's sometimes what it becomes. So much like check, we did this, and not so much I have this experience. And one of in the TED Talk, it wasn't in this clip, but if you watch the whole thing, she mentions that we will actually make sure we check everything on the checklist and take out sleep. So we don't need to prioritize the very humanistic physical needs of our children. So, we're going to do this just because we think we have to get all these things done, where these are growing children. We need our sleep, they need their sleep. So it's just some of these things come at a cost.
Yeah, and then just for us I want to mention this because I think it's part of the reasons why we schedule so many things is keeping up, increased pressure on families to keep up, right? This is the saying, keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, you think about like, well, if I didn't sign up for this, then my kid's gonna miss out on something. Or if their friend's doing this and then they're gonna feel left out and then I'm gonna miss out this opportunity. So, that's part of the reasons that some of us sign up for so many things or are worried. Again, thinking back to my childhood, there wasn't a travel team until, 7th and 8th grade. Now there's travel teams at kindergarten. Like, there wasn't, these trainings.
Oh my gosh, you play for this AU team, or you play for this AU team, and now I want to be on that. And there's a lot of excitement, and we want to support the development of your child's passions or skills. It's also just being mindful. It's a very different world when we were younger. Right now, you can pay to your child to be on any private team if your child is or is not a good athlete. So it's just to the point you may find any opportunity for your artist to be able to explore or be able to showcase. Anywhere if you look, you will find it. So it's not, what is your goal? And that was one of the things that we were talking about earlier. What is your goal as a parent? Is it the social pressure to make sure you did all these things to make sure you're there, or to make sure and we're all guilty of it, that they get blurred. Like, oh my God, they're on that team. Well, let me see what that's like. That looks like really good. Like, their uniforms are great. They just went to Delaware. They did the whole weekend in Rehoboth. They went to Cedar Grove. But maybe there's more fundamentals. And I hate to use sports.
I know, me too. I'm sorry, I just caught that. Yeah. But even like play, for visual performing arts families or whatever, there are a lot of them around this area, right? We're in northern New Jersey, close to New York. Like Megan said, you can pay to put your kid in a play, and they'll be in this performance for Seussical. You could do that now when they're in 2nd grade if they really love it, but you could probably still get in when they're in 6th grade if you want to dabble in that too, if you're willing to.
And we forget to put the practice in. I think the biggest difference I have heard about the European NBA versus our NBA, and forgive me for not calling the game what is that they play a fraction of the amount of games as our NBA players do because they practice. And so that's why we have so many athletes that want to come to the NBA, they're stand-up players, because their schedules look completely different than what an athlete would look like. And that's what the professional is. So now take a think. A lot of people think we're going to have the next Picasso or the next LeBron James or whoever we anticipate.
So I know we talked about some of the benefits of free time and overscheduling, but there are a lot of benefits of extracurricular activities. So I want to make sure we note that, right? Encourages positive habits such as routine. Sometimes when as a counselor, I hear from kids like, well, I had football and this and that, and I was able to get my homework done. Now that I'm not doing an activity, I'm like, can't get my homework done. So it does create those routines like that they knew they had to get their homework done or this. I hear that in the middle school sometimes, that it does create positive habits. You knew you have to get this. It helps with time management because you have to be at a certain place at a certain time. If you can't get that done. It helps them learn about interests, their talents, builds confidence if they're finding success in it, and leadership skills and teamwork, right? Because a lot of times with some of these, with some of the technology, right, that's a lot of times it's individually in isolation. Although maybe some of them, the games when they're playing, they're communicating, again, a lot of times they're individual. So the teamwork part of, the technologically based childhood, we don't see as much opportunities for teamwork again. So those extracurricular activities where there's group work, whether again it's visual performing arts, whether it's whatever, you do learn a lot of things about being on a team and working together in a group, which can be really, really important.
You need that later to get grown up.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Even if you're working from home, if you're working on coding, at some point in every career, in every functionality of every realm of life, you need to be able to communicate, you need to resolve conflict, you need to be able to accept that you did something wrong, or being vulnerable, or having those uncomfortable situations.
And then I want to make sure I mention, because there are a lot of benefits, again, about the extracurriculars, you make a community, whether it be whatever activity you're involved in, whether it's an art class, whether it's, drama class, whether, I'm just trying to think of different things. You build that community, which is a really nice thing for families as well, right? As adults as well as your children. Okay. we already, so taking some small steps. We have about 2 more slides, I think. So taking some small steps to facilitate opportunities for your child to develop. So these are some things, again, that we talked about that are hard and may be uncomfortable for us as adults. But I'm just gonna go through a couple of them. So pause before you jump into help. And I'm guilty of this, right? Like, so I read somewhere on, I don't know, I subscribe to all these counseling things, like let your child try 3 before you ask me. And it always sticks with me. So try 3 times or try 3 different ways to find the solution before you ask me. So taking pausing before we jump in and say, oh, I'll just tie your shoe, because, you know, we don't allow them to learn if we don't allow them to pause, if we don't allow them to try it. Okay? And then we kind of talked about this before, Megan. Start with small steps. So, you know, if you're expecting your kid to do the laundry, they've never done the laundry before, you have to take that time. So in the beginning, it may take more time from you and more effort from you to allow them to learn those skills to grow. But, you know, in the long run, they'll be able to do them by themselves. But you may have to break it down the steps, like kind of like we were talking before. Here's how you put toothpaste on it. You know, we assume they know it, but they may not know, you know? So, you know, breaking down those small steps and putting in the time first will allow for more independence later.
And then, you know, reinforce progress, don't overprotect. So they need to make mistakes along the way to get to the final goal. And that's just natural, right? And I use this example at kindergarten all the time. A lot of you know, can your little baby or brother or sister come to the kindergarten and no? Does your baby walk? No, they don't walk. I said, oh, I said, were you born walking? No. I said, oh, you had practice. We had this conversation, right? Yeah. They're still learning, and everything that happens to them, they need to learn in steps. So if we keep protecting them, just like that child that we don't want them to fall, they're never going to walk. And if we keep protecting, rather than saying, great, now we're standing. Now they're, you know, pushing their foot to do the next. Breaking it down to the small successes, I think, is huge, because that's where you grow. And I think, you know, opportunities like allowing your children to do chores, have responsibilities, having natural consequences from not having it are all appropriate. And, you know, we need to just be mindful of it as a parent. Again, Let Grow is one of the organizations, and the author of Anxious Generation is one of the founders of it. We just introduced it at the kindergarten center just to try to give some guidelines for parents. And it was pretty interesting, some of the students' responses. They were like, I did it myself. And I'm like, freak, no, like I did it. Like it was repeatedly telling me, you know, they made the salad, and it was like 10 times. Like, I really did it myself. I'm like, that's great. So at that level of excitement for something that probably, you know, the parents like, all right, let's try this. And then the ripple effect of it is significant. And it lets them feel success to try new things, to branch out.
And then just, we talked about the overscheduling and how, you know, we're all guilty of it, or at least I know I'm guilty of it. These are just some strategies that you may find helpful. So the visual schedule for families, like, I don't know, I use Google Calendar, and it just like, sometimes I'm just like overwhelmed by it myself. But you know, having color copy for each individual. And this might allow you to have a conversation or be more aware. Like if you say Megan is yellow and I'm red and Mr. Ryan is green, and we see Megan has, you know, 1,000 yellow things on there. It's a nice visual to say, wait, does Megan really need all of these activities? Is it way too much compared to, you know, Carrie and Mr. Ryan, you know, so I think the visual, like we said earlier, even with the checklist, can be helpful so you can see it. You may not realize it in the moment. Oh, I signed you up for singing, and I signed you up for this, and I signed you up for that. And then when you look at the calendar, you're like, oh my God, I don't have any downtime. Like every single day after school, we are doing somewhere, we're running somewhere. That visual is a nice way to kind of gather information about your family and what your goal is as a family and what your goal is for your children. So
schedule in those uncolored blocks,
yeah.
Right? That you're like, okay, I have nothing planned, and I'm keeping this as an open time. And who knows what it'll look like, and you may do something, but at least you know, and it's like a cognizant, like, I have this point. And I think it's just, with all these things checked off or color-coded that you were saying, like, is it quality versus quantity? Like, is it a quality experience? Is it worth it? Are they getting something out of it? Are you rushing there? They don't want to go. You're anxious, and now they're anxious, and now you're fighting. They get out, and you're like, okay, what did we just get out of this other than back to that check mark list of things we want to do?
And again, we talked about, communicating as a family, like asking your child for feedback. What if we had to choose, whether it be for monetary reasons, whether it be for time reasons, whether it be for just being way too overwhelmed, what maybe you prioritize, like what do you like best, right? Like you've tried all these different activities. It's really exhausting doing them, or a family can't, monetarily, not that you have to share all of that with them, but like, let's pick your top 2 and we're gonna do that for this season, I have some friends who say we only do one thing a season, and I'm like, really? And I have others who are signed up for, 5 things a season. That's what works for their family, and each one of us is different, right? So you have to find what works for your family. And then again, finding the balance for your family about what works for you. Again, it may be different for Megan versus me versus you. Those are just some things to kind of touch base about from strategies for overscheduling. Yeah.
In sum, I think all these experiences that we've discussed, helping to allow your child to understand their schedule or how to do things for themselves, all of those independent skills or those ways to organize time are really executive functioning skills. Those are the skills that if you're a child with ADHD, you may struggle more so with. As you're developing, you develop better executive functioning skills. And we're having a separate workshop at the end of the month. We're going to combine them, but we really feel like there's value in just providing some direct strategy. You're going to leave here and be like, here's 12 new things that I can start working with or implementing just as more knowledge in your parenting toolkit. That'll be February 27th, so it'll be here. It'll be a Friday workshop again. I think this is kind of like the prelude to that. So it's giving us the information and the why behind it. Ms. Huzzy, who is the student assistant counselor here, is going to present it. And actually it came from a lot of parent requests. So this is something that we see as a community, and in response to, we're like, let's give it more time. And she's gonna hopefully, or I know she will, that she'll provide you literally strategies that you're gonna walk away with like in hand. So there's something to look forward to for next month.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
I have a quick one, sorry.
That's okay. Here.
So, going back to doing too much or, scheduling a lot, how do you, because there were a couple nights during, football and cheer season that Ella was having, because that's the beginning of the school year.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and you try to, get on top of them, and there I am, I'm like, screw this, I'm taking that hour and a half that they're practicing, and I'm walking around the track, because I just don't care. But then I noticed, Ella would come home, and I'm like, I forgot, I have homework. And then, do I let her do her homework at 9 o'clock at night? Or do I just say, well, you didn't look at the beginning of the week?
Right. It's a growing curve, and I think it's going to be specific. So it might be like, look, okay, in September, you forgot it, we're still getting into routine, but before we go to practice, you need to double check that there's nothing more. You need to come to me and show me that you did your assignment. This is what was assigned, and that's where it is. So, because, if it was, we forget things too. So we're doing things at 11 o'clock, and they're like, oh my gosh, we forgot to do the permission slip or make lunch, I forgot to order Boomly. Boomly could be the but it's one of those things where we're all humans.
Yeah.
So we can't have these expectations not to be the humanistic part of it. But
If it's something that you're habitual, right? If it's every single night your daughter's coming home at 9 o'clock and saying I didn't do my homework, then I think it. But like Megan said, if it's here or there, we are human, right? We do.
Because then I'm kicking myself that I didn't, I took time for myself.
Yeah.
But I should have been going home and, rifling through her backpack.
you shouldn't have.
No.
I would say no.
Okay.
You need time.
As an educator and as a parent, part of the homework routine, it should be set from the beginning, and it's, you come home from school, you don't have to do your homework right away, but whenever you're doing it, you're taking your stuff out, you're going through it, and it's part of your responsibility. They know what is for homework, their teacher told them. They are responsible in their classrooms, starting in kindergarten for different things. They know when they're done with a task, they have to put it in a certain folder, or when they're done with an activity, there's a certain next step. Having those steps, and again, it may be using a little picture thing. It's going to be, here's your bag. It might be snack, backpack, and let's picture the backpack open on the dining room table, and it's going to be, tell mom what was for homework, and then it's going to be zip, it's unzipped and put away. And just those little things will eventually help to
Have it.
the guidance before, like having an independent child for high school. That is something from the beginning that I think is crucial because it is also showing the importance between home and school. It is your responsibility at school to do everything. Teachers have 25 children, so when we have children who can't, tie their shoes or figure out how to put a folder in a backpack or these things because they've just been doing it, and the parents think, oh, it's just this. It's not a just. It's when there's 25 of them that can't do it, or when the expectation is I'm just sitting here and waiting for someone to do it for me, is where that gap from home to school really is evident. And it's why, as a district, we pride ourselves in having great communication with parents, because if you're not helping them and we're not helping them, we're butting, we're not making them optimally successful.
And also, you need downtime too. I just want to make sure I point that too.
Put the oxygen mask on
Yeah.
yourself before anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think for yourself, you're probably more patient
Should,
at 9 o'clock.
after
than
you've
that.
gone for a walk, So we have to remember, we have to give ourselves a little grace, right? We are humans. We make mistakes. We also need downtime. We also need time for ourselves, or else we're going to be anxious, So.
To that matter, I think it's good actually to mention it, that I need some time for myself.
Yes,
This-
I agree.
And say, okay, you know what, my mom needs some time for herself, maybe I need some time for
Yes.
myself. That's what I'm trying to do with my older one.
So you're making a point to teach your children that you are a
It's
human,
way of humor.
and that you have needs too, and that downtime for yourself. And I think that's a huge thing because it also allows that separation. Like, you need to be self-sufficient because I'm not always going to do X, Y, Z, or go get yourself the drink of water. I need 10 minutes to myself, or from I want to watch this show. It's really important on whatever. But I think that's a great lesson for you and for them.
It's interesting how respectful they are about that. Oh, I mean, sometimes, I started journaling recently, and I was thinking I'm gonna have a battle every morning, but no, mommy's right.
That's good. That's great. Success.
When you're not, you are, right?
Success. That's great.
And I think it's important because then it also shows them you're modeling self-care. And
Yeah.
that's something, and you're modeling downtime or whatever it may be, that is something that we're trying to facilitate.
That's something we started doing actually toward the tail end of the pandemic, especially. I'm like, to my husband especially, but even myself, put down the phone and pick up a book.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a Stephen King book. It was huge, My son was so impressed by it. He was like, 5, 6 at that point. He's like, I thought it was I was reading the phone book. But then they got really excited about seeing me be happy to be reading,
Yeah.
the behavior you want to see.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means getting off of our
Phones, yeah.
Like I said, we're fortunate that
Yeah.
I've been able to, I won't allow a gaming system in our house because I have a problem.
Right.
And I know that because I spent a good chunk of my college years.
Yeah.
So I know that. So we've sidestepped so many of the pitfalls, and yet, especially now with the Chromebooks, now that's a whole other thing. Our issue is they'll have their homework now. When my kids are in 4th grade, their homework is largely on a Chromebook. I understand I'm not a Luddite. I get why that is. Although I will say I miss worksheets. Sometimes I really do miss worksheets. What my one son will do is he'll be like, oh yeah, I'm working on my homework. And you gotta be like, I have to be on him because he'll finish his homework and he'll just switch over to whatever stupid game that they have found that the school hasn't shut down
Yeah.
until they go to another, So the screen time they get, we are constantly figuring out how much screen time to allow them because they're getting so much at school. And then they're not, and then now my kids have learned not to be very forthcoming about anything. They have, I know the teachers that don't allow screen time for downtime, but then they're the ones that do. So it's a battle because I appreciate the need to use screens in the school. But it's just like how much screen time have you already consumed that you come home and you demanding more
Yeah.
and more.
Yeah.
They go to the library with their friends after school for an hour. I know they're on book the entire time. Fine, that's your hour.
Yeah.
Right, and that's your family decision.
Yeah.
And it's, just when you go to work, everyone is working on the computer, or we have our work in our
I
pockets,
understand
so
it's
we're,
active life.
yeah.
But
It's
I
just-
don't like to have to ride her on
Yeah.
when they're home because I'm
Yeah.
like, you've been doing homework for a while.
Yeah.
Or you look like you're enjoying it a little.
Not too much.
Because then I'm like, on them, and then it goes against the whole independence thing.
And I think-
Constant struggle.
And just, I know we've been here a while, but like the opportunity for collaboration has been something that we've talked about as a district and have really moved to put into the classrooms as well. So it's that collaboration. So
Yeah.
it might be up for a resource sometimes, some of the Chromebooks that they're doing, and they obviously have their
They
work
can,
in it,
I
but
totally understand
there is also that conscious shift of allowing them to practice those skills in a different way. So the problem solving, the communication, those different ends. So
I think too, I'm further in, I have 2 high school students, so I have one high school senior. And part of it is like, you have to learn that, because I know I'm sending them off hours away next year with no powers for goal. They're gonna take my check, and tell me nothing. So there is a level, they have to kind of learn to figure that out.
Right.
Like, I have all this work to do, and I have the temptation of the video game, the YouTube videos, the this and the that, so it's, to some degree, it's a detriment, but it's something they're starting to learn now, that if I'm spending too much time on this game, then I'm scrambling to get my homework done and I'm tired. So there, it's good, as parents, you can start having that conversation, because that conversation, it's not going away, and the older they get, the more it's there. So it is a skill we have to teach them. How do you, myself too, I'll sit down to do something and then I'll start watching, one Instagram reel on organizing my closet, and then like 3 hours later, I'm like, I have a card, and I'm building a closet organizer for my kid.
But I appreciate that, you were able to contribute to our conversation. I think it made it a little bit more of a conversation than just
Presenting,
listening to us.
yeah.
But
We
again,
appreciate it.
our next one is in February to discuss like some executive functioning skills. We do have one February 7th. This is a similar workshop that was for this age group last time. We're talking about the impact and the opportunities that are out there for the K-3 students with technology. So that one, you're more than welcome to join, but it's a different age group. The next workshop for the K-3 is next Friday, and it's at Washington School, same time. Not same time. It's at 8:50. And then the following, at the end of the month, at the 27th, it's here, executive function. 28th, okay, I'm sorry, you're right, it is the 28th, my apologies, it is the 28th Friday. So it's just like this, we're trying to keep them all consistent. Okay? All right,
Thank you. There's coffee and donuts.